and no more forever. These two events happened at the same moment, many years apart. In the year 2448, it says in Exodus 14:27, "And Moses stretched forth his hand over the sea, and the sea returned to his strength when the morning appeared. And the Egyptians fled against it, and the Lord overthrew the Egyptians in the midst of the sea." So we can see that this is a picture of salvation, and it happened when the morning appeared. Now in the year of Messiah's resurrection, it says in Mark 16:9, "Now when Jesus was risen early, the first day of the week, he appeared first to Mary Magdalene, out of whom he had cast 7 devils." Remember, the story of the Exodus from Egypt has to match the events of Messiah's death and resurrection. It is a shadow of future events. Another proof of a morning resurrection is in Exodus 14:21. "And Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and the Lord caused the sea to go back by a strong east wind all that night, and made the sea dry land, and the waters were divided." The Feast of Weeks. In Moses' time, we'll look at Exodus 19:1. "In the 3rd month, when the children of Israel were gone forth out of the land of Egypt, the same day came they into the wilderness of Sinai." In Exodus 20, "And God spake all these words, saying, I am the Lord thy God." This is when he spoke to them the 10 Commandments. Now in this time when he spoke the 10 Commandments was 50 days from the crossing of the Red Sea. Now let's look and see when it's observed. In Leviticus 23:15, "And ye shall count unto you from the morrow after the Sabbath, from the day that ye brought the sheaf of the wave offering, 7 Sabbaths shall be complete. Even unto the morrow after the 7th Sabbath shall ye number 50 days, and ye shall offer a new meat offering unto the Lord." So it was observed 50 days from first fruits. And Acts 2, verses 3 and 4. "And when the day of Pentecost was fully come, they were all with one accord in one place. And suddenly there came a sound from heaven as of a rushing mighty wind, and it filled all the house where they were sitting. And there appeared unto them cloven tongues like as of fire, and it sat upon each of them. And they were all filled with the Holy Ghost, and began to speak with other tongues, as the Spirit gave them utterance." Now the word Pentecost, it means 50. Let's put these spring feasts and appointed days, which are Moedim, on timelines of the year 2448, that was the year of the Exodus from Egypt, and the year Messiah was crucified and rose from the dead. On Aviv, Nisan 14th, the lamb was killed for the Passover. Now in Yeshua's time, he died on the cross and was placed in the sepulchre. On Aviv or Nisan 15th, in 2448, during the night, all the firstborn were killed, and they left Egypt. Later, God declared Nisan 15th a Sabbath. In Yeshua's time, his body rested this night and day, as well as the next day, which was the weekly Sabbath. God had planned it perfectly. Now first fruits in Moses' time, the 17th of Aviv or Nisan, was when the sea came together and killed Pharaoh and all his men. There was salvation for all of Israel. Now first fruits in Yeshua's time was his resurrection as the morning appeared on the first day of the week, which again is our salvation. Now the Feast of Weeks in Moses' time was when God spoke to them the 10 Commandments. It was 50 days from the crossing of the Red Sea. It was 50 days from the resurrection, which was Pentecost. God gave us the perfect picture of what was to come. He tells us the end from the beginning. Another wonderful shadow was that they were to pick the lamb without spot or blemish on the 10th of Aviv or Nisan, and keep it for 4 days until they killed it. And as we know, Yeshua entered Jerusalem, declaring himself to be the Lamb without spot or blemish on the 10th of Nisan, and they questioned him to find fault 4 days. Now let's talk about the fall appointed days, or Moedim, and feasts. The first one is the memorial of the blowing of trumpets. That's on the 7th month of God, the first day of the month. The next is the Day of Atonement, the 7th month of God, the 10th day of the month. And then the Feast of Tabernacles, in the 7th month of God, on the 15th through the 22nd days of the month. The memorial of the blowing of trumpets, or Yom Teruah in Hebrew. In Leviticus 23:24, speak unto the children of Israel, saying, in the 7th month, in the first day of the month, shall ye have a Sabbath, a memorial of blowing of trumpets, a holy convocation. We can see here that it is a Sabbath and a holy convocation or assembly. The first thing you should ask yourself is, what is this day in memorial of? Let's read Exodus 19:15 through 19. And he said unto the people, Be ready against the 3rd day, come not at your wives. And it came to pass on the 3rd day, in the morning, that there were thunders and lightnings and a thick cloud upon the mount, and the voice of the trumpet exceeding loud, so that all the people that was in the camp trembled. And Moses brought forth the people out of the camp to meet with God, and they stood at the nether part of the mount. And Mount Sinai was altogether on a smoke, because the Lord descended upon it in fire, and the smoke thereof ascended as the smoke of a furnace, and the whole mount quaked greatly. And when the voice of the trumpet sounded long, and waxed louder and louder, Moses spake, and God answered him by a voice. The sound of the trumpet here was a warning that God was about to descend onto them and speak to them. What could this day be a shadow of? This is just our opinion after reading the scriptures and seeing how the spring-appointed days and feasts match the first coming of the Messiah. This may be the warning that the Messiah is about to return, so you better get ready. Let's look in the New Testament in Matthew 24:30 through 31 for more information. And then shall appear the sign of the Son of Man in heaven, and then shall all the tribes of the earth mourn, and they shall see the Son of Man coming in the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. And he shall send his angels with a great sound of a trumpet, and they shall gather together his elect from the 4 winds, from one end of heaven to another. The Day of Atonement.